And when you grow up poor, you notice when people are generous. Like Paul, with this attorney, was like always giving things away. Like he'd find a deal on noodles, he'd buy like a semi-load, and everybody at church the next Sunday would walk away with like 200 cases of noodles. I'm like, Paul, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, that was like 40 G's. You just dropped like out of nowhere. I'm like, why? I don't get it. Why? And he's like, didn't you see their smiles?
John Ruhlin, we're so excited to have you here finally. This has been a long time in the making, but welcome to the show, sir. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, man, this is gonna be a lot of fun. This is a little blast from the past.
Yeah. So just so you guys gotta hear this, right? So John and I have actually technically known each other for maybe like 10, 12 years on and off, but it's an interesting way that we kind of know about each other, because I was like this like blue-eyed sales rep for a company that we both worked for, and I was getting into the business. It was I was like 21 years old probably at the time, and it was like maybe my second. I was in college, and I was like at the time, so I was like the rep you wanted to know, like this sales rep for this company worked for Vector Marketing Cutco. And I was like the guy at this time. I was breaking sales records in my region. I was like on stage. I was talking to, everybody wanted to talk to me. I was like that guy. I was winning everything, right? And so just to give you a little bit of insight as to what that looks like. So that summer, we come back from the summers and we'd sell knives and make money, and then go back to college and have more money than our friends typically, and. Most of our friends are doing construction or something, making, $3K or whatever. We were making like maybe a lot more than that, 10, 20K, whatever. And so it was cool. And so being like the top rep, we do in a summer, I think I did like 65,000 or something like that in sales. All right. And I'm telling you, I was the guy. I had trophies everywhere. Well, then there was this like mystical figure out in space that you heard about. I think he was in California at the time. John, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that around that time, probably California or
Ohio?
Somewhere. You were in Ohio. Okay. So there's this mystical figure, and the guy, he's got like 1.2 million in sales around that time. And we're just seeing it on the leaderboards. We're like, who is this guy? This guy, John Ruhlin. Because to do what I did is like near impossible. Like it is. You're sitting across, every time you sell a knife, it's $100 per knife, okay? And you're selling sets of them, and a whole summer grinding hard, and I got to 65,000. This guy's at like 1.2 million, and it was unfathomable. This mystical creature that was selling all of these knives at the time. And so all I heard about this guy is that he looked like Tom Brady, and he had just as much money as Tom Brady at the time. And so I was like, I gotta meet this guy. And so, eventually, so I was kind of in awe about this guy, John Ruhlin, for, this 10, 12 years ago. So finally I meet him, and I'm like, wow, how did you even do this? Like, what is going on? And we met briefly, and I was kind of like, I don't know, almost starstruck at the time. And John probably doesn't remember. I remember it vividly. That's kind of how it works, right? So
wasn't it in Arizona when we met, or what? Which conference was it?
We met. I think we met in it was a California conference, I think, that we met at. It was some big like national conference, or I don't know, something like that. And so I got to be face to face with them, and so the reason I'm telling you this story is because right around that time is when he had figured something else out that everyone else in our organization had not figured out. And that was kind of the basis for his whole program that exists today. But 10 years ago, he was already kind of building it and starting on this unique process and system. And a lot of it, we heard, how is he selling these? Because I'm seeing moms in their homes, like one-on-one. How is he doing it? And he's doing something called gifting, or I don't know, corporate gifts or something. That's all we knew.
Yeah.
So John, tell us a little bit. Take us back. What were you figuring out at that time that was kind of different than what everyone else was doing? How did that kind of come about? And give us a little bit of history on that.
Yeah. Well, what I'd say is that whether you're in real estate, whether you're a pro sports team, whether you're financial services, whether you make widgets, nobody really cares about gifts. They really care even less about knives. So if you called up somebody, when I interned with a company, Cutco, the same company that you worked with, 20 years ago. And really a lot of what I teach even to this day, whether it's to Google or whether it's to, small investment funds or financial advisors, I learned early on when I pitched my girlfriend's dad knives. He was an attorney. He was a rainmaker. He was a referral machine. He could raise money. He owned real estate. He owned oil wells and banks. And I grew up a farm kid. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, milking goats, one of 6 kids, 1-acre garden, like crazy, like lower middle income. And when you grow up poor, you notice when people are generous. Like Paul, with this attorney, was like always giving things away. Like he'd find a deal on noodles, he'd buy like a semi-load, and everybody at church the next Sunday would walk away with like 200 cases of noodles. I'm like, Paul, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, that was like 40 G's. You just dropped like out of nowhere. I'm like, why? I don't get it. Why? And he's like, didn't you see their smiles? So it wasn't a tactical thing, but Paul was the master relationship builder. So I remember working up the courage. I pitched Paul the idea of giving away. I thought all of his clients were men. They're CEOs of companies. They're affluent people and they're into the outdoors. Maybe they'll have mercy on me and order a bunch of Cutco's pocket knives and hunting knives. They're like, $100, $200 knives, not like from China. These are real knives. And he changed my life forever. He said, John, I don't want to order pocket knives. Got to order 100 of the paring knives. I'm like, you want to order $100 paring knives? Like, that's weird. Why? Like, these are all dudes. Like, I'm like this country bumpkin kid, like about as chauvinistic as it gets. Like, why you want to give a kitchen tool to a guy? And he's changed my life forever. He said, John, the reason I have more referrals, the reason I can raise money, the reason I can get access, the reason I can do deals is I found out a simple truth 40 years ago. And that's if you take care of the family and business, everything else takes care of itself. So as a 20-year-old, I looked at Paul, who was 60, and I'm like, I want to be Paul someday. I want to be successful. I want to have relationships. I want people to take my phone call. I want to be generous. I want to be able to contribute to my community and church, all these things. So I got 40 years to get there. So I started to mimic what I saw in Paul. So I started to get, I would never call somebody and say, hey, I want to sell you knives. I would send somebody a $200, $300, $400, $500 gift with their CEO's name, the wife's name, husband's name, whatever. And I'd put, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise to be worth your time. Handwritten note, all that. And I'd get meetings with like $200 million companies. And they would be like, I'd walk into the boardroom wearing the one suit I have on. And I'm nervous because I'm 21, 22 years old. And I walk in, the CEO walks in, he's like in his 60s. And he's like, are you here to, like, the John Ruhlin that sent me the knives? I'm like, yes, sir. He said, I thought you'd be like some seasoned sales executive, like in their 50s. Like, I'm really confused. Are you here to sell me knives? I said, no, sir. I'm here to help you and your 1,000 sales reps do exactly what I did to you to your top 10,000 relationships. So wow. the numbers you were seeing at 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I was basically using these knives as the delivery vehicle for emotion. Because at the end of the day, like, we all do business with people that we like, trust, and are top of mind. Like, that's the trifecta. Most people suck at all 3 of them. They do the same dinners and ball games that everybody does, or they send out, hey, you're $1 million investor. Here's a bar of chocolate with our logo on it. Like, it's like, really? Like, that's the way you show.
And it can have the reverse effect too, right? Like, they're sending you a bar of chocolate. You spent a couple $100,000 with a client, and then they send you a bar of chocolate. You're like, and you can't say anything, right? Like, you're not going to say, bad. Oh, I hated that and I'm offended.
You feel guilty because you feel like because you're like, really, somebody like think that's what the value they placed on the relationship with me, like some like box of brownies or some Amazon gift card, go buy your own gift. Like, here's a bottle of wine and you don't even drink. Here's a bottle of wine that costs $50 and your daily drinker is $150. Like, but most people don't understand that in relationship building, it's like going to a restaurant. I don't care if somebody took 12 hours to make the best lobster bisque in the world. If they bring it out and there's a fly in it, like, it doesn't matter that you spent 12 hours making this amazing lobster bisque. All people see is the fly. And in relationship building, it doesn't matter that Like,
Wow.
yes, you get an internal rate of return of this and whatever else. All of that they take as table stakes. Those are like expectations. If you want to get more referrals, if you want to get more deals, if you want to take an investor from 100 grand to 500 grand, you have to make them feel something in an intangible way. Because people say, John, this gifts don't work. It's stupid. Why would you do that? And I'm like, have you ever had, like, tell that to your wife. Like, oh, the gifts don't matter. That's not true. Like, when you show up for somebody powerfully and do something really thoughtful, really engaging, really personal, the other person, like, that relationship tends to flourish because somebody else feels seen. Even billionaires want to be respected and feel like their life has mattered. And so many people think, oh, it's just about the numbers. We're very, that yes, we have logic, but we make decisions emotionally first and then we justify logically afterwards. And yet most guys are so linear, like, check the box, do the thing at Christmas. I'm like, that's the dumbest time to send a gift on the planet. You want to send it with 50 other people competing with their time and their conference tables ready to collapse? No, show up for your wife or show up for your client or your investor on a random Tuesday in the middle of March, and it'll mean 1,000 times more. So a lot of the things that we teach, people are like, is it really about gifting? I'm like, no, gifting is like, that's the mechanism. It's relationship building. And every business rises and falls on relationships. And that's where we learned, like, we weren't a knife company. We weren't even a gifting company. Like, the way we've gotten access to Google and the Chicago Cubs and places a farm kid never would ever deserves to be. Like one of my biggest referral sources is Cameron Harold. He's one of the top business coaches in the world. Like, he coaches like the Sheikh of Qatar in their 300 companies. And a lot of people pay him 20 grand a month just to coach them. We got access to him at an EO event, and I wanted him to be a mentor, a referral source. I knew he could send me like massive deals, but I wanted his mentoring. I wanted the relationship. And so, like, a lot of people, they're like, hey, let's go dinner in a ball game. That's what I invited him to, because that's all I had Cavs tickets at the time, and lower level. And his response was like everybody else's internally, except he actually said it. He's like, I guess I don't have anything else going on. I guess I'll go to your game. And I'm like, well, that's not going to woo him. Like, obviously, like, he doesn't give two rips about the ball game or the Morton's dinner. And most clients that you're inviting out to dinner or ball games, whatever else, like, they'll say yes, but are they blown away? No, because everybody's offering the same kind of, business development, entertaining type things. So long story short is, I found out he loved Brooks Brothers. And when he was coming into Cleveland, he wasn't going to have time to go shop for us at Brooks Brothers. He's from Canada. I outfitted his whole hotel room with $7,000 of Brooks Brothers clothes, all in his size. All the jackets, all the suits, all the pants, belts, shoes, everything. And when he came down from his room and saw that, his eyes were about this big. He said, John, whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about, I've never had anybody make me feel this way. After that, I continued for 10 years to send him gifts every quarter. I built him a $10,000 Cutco knife set. I built him like wine tools. I invested probably 25 grand in that relationship. And here's the kicker. People are like, John, why would you keep giving him gifts? You didn't have to. You already had them after the Brooks Brothers thing. I'm like, when you show up with people when you want to, not because you have to, that's when it means the most. The return on relationship with that relationship has been multi-seven figures. Invest 25 grand, multi-seven figures. I'm not a mathematician, but that's like over a 50x. Like, you think you get a 2x or a 3x on Facebook? It can never compete with a relationship. It can never compete with the right people being invested into. And so when people are like, oh, John, the gifting thing, that's kind of cute. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. Like, the reason we're getting, close to 6-figure speaking fees as a farm kid is because we've been able to invest in relationships, and they go out and become our salespeople. And I get access to deals and opportunities I never should have access to, all based upon the same principle of this giftology of investing in people. And so, simple concept, but most people, they might do it once, but very few people do this consistently.
So you figured this out years ago. You figured this out when we were seeing you on those leaderboards. You had already figured this out, and that's what was going on at that time, where you were just crushing me and the rest of the country. You were like the number one guy the whole time, and you had already figured this out.
Element. I mean, not all of it. I mean, like anything else.
Right.
It every day I'm learning from my clients and from our team, and from, like, we're always refining and polishing. But yeah, I mean, what I teach today and get paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach, a lot of the core principles I learned when I was 21 years old. Now,
And
the order has shifted, the timing, the credibility of, when you have the Giftology book, you have, endorsements from, Martha Stewart's assistant and like crazy people like that. All of a sudden, people now are willing to add zeros to what they're paying you. But the core principles of what I'm teaching, I was begging to speak for free. I'm still teaching like some of the same things that nobody wanted to listen to. Back then, Cutco people wanted to listen because they looked at the scoreboard and they're like, how is he laughing 100 times? And it was because I was going out. I wasn't a fair competition. I was bringing like an atomic bomb to a sword fight. Like,
yeah.
Like when you go and sell 1,000 sets of knives to one person, like how you can't go see enough Mrs. Joneses to go
Nope.
like compete with that, because I was using it. And I still, to this day, people like the New York Times 2 years ago was like, John, what's the hot new sexy gift? I said, you really want to know? They said, yeah. I said, the stupid knives. And they laughed. They thought I was joking. They're like, oh, yeah. That was your college thing. But no, seriously, what is it? I said, we sell millions of dollars of knives to this day. They're like, really? I'm like, well, last time I checked, whether you're 25 or 85, you still cook. With COVID, you cook 10,000% more. Like most people have sucky knives. They have a beautiful $500,000 kitchen. You've seen them over and over again. People have the set that they got when they were married. And it's not even about the knives. Like the gift we did for Tony Robbins, a client wanted to take care of Tony and Sage. And I said, Pete, we got to do knives. And he's like, really? For Tony? And I said, well, check this out. We're going to take the, a $5,000-$6,000 knife set. Every knife, all 40 knives are going to have quotes of his wisdom that we cultivated over 40 years. So it's going to be an artifact, an instant heirloom, a daily reminder for him and his grandkids someday of what the wisdom that he and the impact that he had. And then we put it inside a $2,500 strong wood. It's called a strong box, has a video screen. And Tony, like he could go buy 1 million knife sets. Who cares? But when Sage, his wife, saw what was carved into all the blades and then saw the video of the client speaking and saying, this is what you've done in the world. This is the impact you had on me and millions of people. She called like basically crying, gushing, like, this is one of the most thoughtful gifts ever. It wasn't about the knives. I could take that same knife set. I could send it to Oprah. I could send it to a billionaire. But it's the personalization of it. It's the handwritten note, the video. It's the timing. It's the messaging behind it that makes it land at this deep, visceral, emotional level. So many times people get caught up like, oh, I did the knife thing. It doesn't work. And I'm like, did you follow the recipe? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you bake bread 100,000 times, but every time you don't put yeast in, guess what you don't get? You don't get freaking bread. One ingredient wrong changes everything. So many times people say we did the gifting thing. And I'm like, did you follow the recipe to a T? You don't have to outsource it to us to do that. But most people will cut corners. They'll they won't do the handwritten note, or they won't do the engraving. They won't do the personalization. They won't do the timing right. They won't include the spouse. All of those things are all part of what makes it work. It's not the item. The widget is like, they can go buy their own widget. It's the
system.
It's the system. So, if your audience, like literally what took us 20 years to perfect, your team, your audience, your tribe can go download our entire system. Now, if you don't follow the system, don't expect it to work the same way. But the timing, personalization, how much you should budget, go to giftologysystem.com. They can go download our entire playbook for free. I don't even have to go buy Giftology, the book. But what I'd say is that like doing one artifact or one gift really well is not difficult. Like anybody could do that for their spouse. But if you want to scale thoughtfulness, if you want to do this for 50 or 500 or 5,000 relationships, that's where people come back to us and like, John, this is hard. I had somebody reach out the other day. They're like, we've been doing these wow boxes, $400 to $800 boxes for the last 4 years. And I have 4 people full time. That's all they do is they're packaging and sourcing. I'm like, it's hard to play Santa Claus year round. Not for one person, but if you have hundreds of people to take care of, that's where outsourcing it to an agency that can make sure that the heavy lifting is done. But the principles themselves, like I've had people reach out and say, John, my marriage is better. I took your book and now I'm treating my wife or my husband differently because I'm really applying what you taught for business relationships. It still works with you, like personal relationships because it's humans. It's human to human. Whether you sell widgets or sell real estate or build houses, like we're all just human beings. I think a lot of people have forgotten that in 2021 more than ever. Like digital's cool and scaling's cool, but it's still that human to human relationship that people crave and want, and that's where people are willing to write the big checks if they feel treated like a human and they like, trust, and top of mind. If you nail those three, like magical things start to happen.
There's like a certain, I don't know, I always feel like it's like tipping over into a certain level of relationship when you finally get over this hump and that person's going to take your call regardless. They'll text you back regardless because they just have this warm feeling around the relationship between you and you get a lot of access that way, and a lot of great things that you're kind of hacking the system almost by coming in this way. And it's such an incredible phenomenon. I mean, I started testing it just, here and there, and you see the results from it. And it's just absolutely incredible what you've discovered. And then to take it even deeper level, create a system around it. So how much should people typically be, allocating for this type of stuff? Like what should they within your system, what do you recommend that they allocate towards gifting to get to their key relationships?
Yeah. Most people's gifting budget is pathetic. Like it's embarrassing. Like they're like, hey, last year we spent $3,000 on brownies. And I'm like, you can spend $3,000 on dinner for like 6 people. And that was your entire budget to show gratitude and appreciation to your most valuable relationships. Like I'll spend more on my wife in a year than you're spending company wide for like 200 people, 200 relationships. Like this is like, so what they need to do is like people oftentimes like, oh, John, like you're just being extravagant, or they're like, oh, gifting, like, like they don't understand that it's not a woo woo thing. Like this is if you follow it consistently year after year and follow the math equation that we've set up, it's a reinvestment strategy, really. 5 to 15% of your net profits should be reinvested back into your relationships, your centers of influence, your clients, your employees. 15 is on the high end, 5 is really low, 10 is kind of about average. And people are like 10% of net, like, but I made $1 million last year. And I'm like, how did you make $1 million? You made it because of these relationships. So you're going to take a sliver, 10% of the million, that's $100,000. You get to keep $900,000. They're buying their own gifts. The people who gave you $1 million are buying their own gifts. But if you do it well, here's the cool thing. You reinvest that $100,000 back into them. They should be over time sending you more referrals, more deals, more people like them, more opportunities, more engagement, more loyalty. So that $100,000 goes into them. And over time, like Cameron, this is the principle. $25,000 invested equals a 50x ROI. Where else can you get that? Your best clients should become your salespeople. Like Cameron, who coaches CEOs, I couldn't hire him if I gave him $2 million a year. He wouldn't become a full-time sales rep. He actually sells better than a $2 million sales rep by going out and just opening doors because he's inspired to, not because he has to. I don't give him a cut. He's doing it because he wants to see me win, because of the relationship. And so when you start saying reinvesting 10% of your net profits, I don't care what your revenue is. Sometimes people are like, oh, in mortgages, we did $20 billion in origination. I'm like, great. What was your net? Oh, it was 20 million. Okay. Let's work with that number. So it's a reinvestment strategy. And over time, like if you did this for 3 years, you're, $1 million in net that you reinvested $100,000 over time, that's $300,000. You should be eventually doing $2 million. So it should pay for itself and then some. And oftentimes it comes back 5x, 10x, 20x, but not if you, like, most people will do this for like 6 months. They'll go from being like Ebenezer Scrooge to Daddy Warbucks. They'll start, doing these gifts, and then they send the gift and then they ask for the referral immediately. And it's like Gary Vaynerchuk, who we were just on his show, like his book is called Jab, 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 Right Hook, which really means give, then you earn the right to ask. Most people give, then ask, give, then get. That's not how, that's not a gift. That's a manipulation. You give a gift and then ask for a referral, or you only give gifts after referrals, and you say you're in the relationship business. No, you're not. You're in the tit for tat transaction business. You give me a referral, here's your $500 bottle of wine. Does that, like, when you're dealing with affluent people, that's not how you inspire them. They didn't give you the referral because they were getting some carrot and stick. They give you the referral because they thought you could help their friend and they would look cool being taken care of, taking care of their friend, and connecting the dots. So people don't understand the idea of when you give a gift and how you give a gift, and even like the transactional type stuff. Like if you can take and reinvest 10% of your net and make it a math equation and commit, we won't take on a client unless they commit for 3 years. Because the last thing you would do is show up generous and then go back to being stingy. You'll actually, like, people will be like, oh, that was just a tactic. They're not generous. They're not kind. They're not thoughtful.
Right.
They were trying to manipulate. They were just trying to like do this tactical thing. And that's what I learned early on from Paul. The people who crush it at this are the Gary V's who don't keep score. They do it and they're playing, like everybody says they're playing the long game, but they're playing the long game in days, not decades. The long game is a marathon. It's, I want to be in business for another 20, 40, 60, 80 years. If you're going to invest that way, then you don't keep score. There's things we're doing for people all the time where it comes back to us. And I saw this with Paul, my original mentor, where seeds he had planted 27 years ago, all of a sudden that person inherited money or a piece of real estate, and they remembered who took care of them before they had a dime to their name. It was Paul. Who's the first phone call that they made to do their estate or to do the transfer or to set up the trust? It was always Paul. Why? Because he was planting seeds and planting these acorns, and they turned into oak trees, but it might take 27 years. And so most people aren't willing to engage in that level of game playing, at that level of chess. They want
So
to
wait. Yeah. John, you're going to give people gifts for 27 years without any turn. So you're playing the long game. The long game. So is there any point in the process where you're like, man, this has been going on for a long time? Or is it just, no, this is just how it works. You have to just keep going and things will come from it along the way.
Like for somebody, you might do something nice for somebody, and whether it's a gift or a referral or open door or whatever else, the focus of your, let's say you're doing like the $1 million example, or 100, you made 100 grand, you invest 10%, that's 10 grand. You're investing that into people that are already more market, people that you already are working with at some level. Most people will do anything to get a prospect, a whale prospect in the door. And you see it even with big companies that are like dangling these things, like DirecTV. They'll treat the people that aren't even a client way better than the people who have been paying them for the last 17 years. That's stupid. Like, that's dumb. You should be taking care of the people that you already have really well versus only going and whining and dining. And then really it's the same way that we do relationships. We like do anything to get, to wine and dine and get some, marry somebody. And then as soon as they're like, we're married, we stop dating them. We stop wooing them. That's a recipe for disaster. Totally. In business, it's the same way. It's like, you'll do anything to get the client. And then as soon as they're in the door, it's like, oh, I'll take you for granted. That's when you double down and show up more, not less. And so, yes, you might invest in somebody for 27 years, but that person that you're investing for 27 years probably was an investor or a client or employee, somebody that was already giving you money, and you're going to show up for them for 27 years. But there are times where you might just show up for somebody and do something nice. Like I meet people on airplanes, I'll send them a $500 gift, and they're like, it might be a billionaire, somebody crazy. And I'm not asking for anything, but they gave me like 30 minutes of their time. And I can't tell you how many like conversations and doors that open up where that person then moves to another company. And now they're like, John, we need a speaker. John, I'm in a position.
Or even in that 30-minute time, you learned one thing that now puts you on a different trajectory in the way you think about the world. Even on that level, that was worth it, right? And that happens all the time when you get in contact with those people, right? And so
what's an hour of their time worth? Some of these people, it's thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, or even hundreds of thousands. So you send them a $500 gift and their time's worth $10,000 an hour. They spent 30 minutes with you. They should send you an invoice for $5,000, but you flip it. But most people like don't value people. Like the most valuable asset for an affluent person, especially, is their time. That's an asset that they can always make more money. They can always but you can't make more time. So if you take even 5 minutes of somebody's time and don't honor them for that time, not signing the deal, not investing. If an investor gives you 30 minutes of time, like that is like an investment. They gave you they actually, like, if you saw like that show up in cash, you'd be like, wow, I just cost them a lot of money. I better bring value. I better like bring something to the table. So it's too many times people don't understand the transactional value of time. And to me, like, that's a great, like, because the bar is so low, when I would meet with somebody, early mentors, that guys that were running $100 million companies, and I would send them a $300 knife set, a couple knives engraved with their name, saying, thanks for carving out time, really appreciate it. Everybody says they appreciate your time, but to me, like, gratitude and is a action. It's a doing. It's putting your money where your mouth is. So many people are like, oh, I'm so appreciative of your time. Great, show me. Like, do something that shows me that you're different than everybody else that's appreciating me for my time. Handwrite the note. Take the time to send the gift. Like those are the things that Paul, my original mentor, did really, really well. And I saw the fruits of showing up for people generously, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And he would do those sorts of things. He would go to the pizza shop and see a bunch of people he loved. Half the people he didn't even know, he'd just pick up the tab. It was like $1,000 because he just loved doing that and showing up for people. And because of that, it created ripples that I just saw them like come back, like in these, like, he was like a Jedi, man. It was like, but it was who he was. It wasn't like, and I've tried to give him credit in the book. I try to give him credit and I've sent him gifts and he's like, John, I just cracked the door open. You did all the work. I'm like, Paul, like, you showed me the playbook. You gave me the social capital. You gave me like, nobody believed my family, my mom. I remember when I signed up to sell knives, she's like, John, none of our friends can afford these knives. Who are you going to sell to? That was her pep talk. Like, she's like, John, like, she grew up one of 13 kids. I got 65 first cousins. They're all like farmers and conservative. But Paul, I saw like Paul's belief in me and what I was doing. But for him, like, it was a way of life. And I think the leaders that dominate with this, that really resonate with this, whether from a core value or from a faith perspective, are the ones that win, because they're not doing it just as a tactical, like, give to get. They really are generous and givers. And you look at the companies that are crushing other competitors, even in the Fortune 500, like a Southwest Airlines. What's their logo? It's love. You look at like a Starbucks. They're all about love and taking care of people. You look at Chick-fil-A. They do 10 times more than everybody else. What do they lead with? They're closed on Sundays, the most valuable day of the year or the week to sell food, but they love people. They show up differently for people. And because of that, like, they crush McDonald's, they crush Subway, they crush everybody. And so this, like, I don't own the corner or the, on kindness. Like, we're just taking an element of it and showing people how could be a scalable thoughtfulness or a scalable strategy to this in any sort of business that involves human to human, very valuable relationships.
So when was I gotta know, when was this, like, you got some crazy result from this that just blew you away? We know the Brooks Brothers story is unbelievable. I thought that's absolutely incredible. Is there any other time where you were like, wow, this is crazy what I just got myself into? Yeah, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, getting onto the Vaynerchuk show was I had been building relationships.
Congratulations on that. That's unbelievable.
It was crazy. Yeah, I've been wanting to do that for like 5 years, ever since the book came out, but I never asked him directly. We hired him to speak. We'd done different things with him, but it was really I built relationships with the people around him. And one of the gifts that was given, I'd comped. I used to make fun of mugs being the worst gift on the planet. And then we found this artist made $1,000 mug for me and one for my wife. The reason they're $1,000 is carved into them is my whole life story, core values, faith, tragedy, overcome, all that kind of stuff. It's like a lifetime achievement award. So we started partnering with these guys. They're called Artifact Mug. And I give them on YPO stages to billionaires as a surprise. And like the whole audience is crying, this billionaire's crying, because it's like his life story legacy carved into a piece of practical functional art. So I ended up with Gary's CMO, Andrea, we ended up comping one for her to give to her husband. And she gave it to him and he like melted. Like, he's an executive for Nickelodeon, just a sweetheart of a guy. He was just, blown away. And a week later, a slot opened up on Gary's show. Somebody canceled and she texted me. She's like, I think you need to be on the show. I didn't ask to be on the show. It was like her idea. And I'm like, that's not really like the topic was like media buying in 2021. I'm like, I'm not really like, I guess media being gifting is like, I do a lot of that kind of buying, but not like, these are all Fortune 500 MOs of like Hyundai and Delta Airlines. If you look at the list, Peloton, it's like one of these is not like the other. There's 12 people being interviewed. I'm one of them. And I'm like the black sheep. But the interview ended up going amazing because I was able to engage Gary in the topic of kindness and playing the long game and showing up for people and how to take care of micro influencers or whatever else. But that whole thing came from a stupid $1,000 mug. I had another client, this is going back probably 7 years ago. I went to a mastermind, it's like 25 grand. I meet this guy, John Bowen, who had been in private equity, and he owned the largest coaching company for financial advisors. All of his clients were 7-figure earners, probably 220 of them. And I met him. I'm like, hey, we own a gifting agency. We can outsource your gifts. Da, da, da. And his response was, oh, that's kind of cute. Like gifting, huh? He's like, I don't think that would really work in our world. And so I ended up sending him some gifts, included his wife. And he called me 6 months later. He said, John, I thought your gifting thing was cute. You know, we met, you're really nice, spent an hour together, but I didn't think it was a fit. Then you started sending some things and I kind of lost track of it. And then my wife, Jan, before we went to bed 3 months ago, said, hey, have you done anything with John Ruhlin lately? And he's like, I thought that was just an anomaly. But then 3 weeks later, she brought your name up again. And then again, he's like, I feel like I'm sleeping with your sales rep. He's like, my wife, Jan's never met you. And all she can talk about is John Ruhlin, how thoughtful he is in these knives and these leather bags. And so he's like, but this worked for us. I said, if you follow the recipe, and he fought me the whole way because he's like, I got 220 guys, 7 figures, 99% of them are married, dudes, middle-aged dudes. And we did knives. I said, we're gonna send knives. We're gonna send them ahead of time. He's like, why can't we just hand them out at the event? I'm like, the timing matters. I said, we gotta have spouses' names. He's like, I don't have spouses' names. I'm like, if you don't get the spouses' names, the deal's off. And we went through this whole dog and pony show. Eventually, all the knives went out to everybody. And at the end of the event, he'd been doing the same event for 5 years, the same Hyatt Regency outside of San Francisco, same food, different speakers, but essentially the exact same blueprint. The only thing different was he followed the Giftology system. That was it. At the end of the survey, he asked for referrals. A referral to him is worth 25 to 50 grand a year for like 5 years. It's a pretty sizable coaching arrangement. And he said, John, I've triple checked the numbers with my CFO, everybody. He said, a 5% bump in referrals would be a big deal for us. Like, that's a lot. He said the referrals went up over any year in 5 years, 107%. 107% over some stupid knives. Even
wow.
You can do 1,000, but even if it was $1,000 gift, which it wasn't, it was like a $300-400 gift. He's like, it dwarfed anything they could have ever done. Like, and here's why. It wasn't about the stupid gift. It was how it made that person feel related to their spouse and related to the organization. And now, instead of, I don't know anybody to refer, now they're looking for the opportunity to want to reciprocate and send business because it wasn't tied to a deal. It wasn't tied to a referral. It was tied to the relationship. So many times people push back, like, what's the real numbers? I'm like, well, the real numbers, like, do you have a sucky business? Do you have a sucky service? Do you have sucky returns? Do you have a sucky product? Then gifting isn't going to save you. But if you do everything else well, then it's like the little cherry on top of the sundae. It's the little surprise. It's like going to the Ritz-Carlton and spending $1,000 a night, but they remember that you like this specific kind of gin, and they have it waiting for you with your favorite kind of mixer and your wife's favorite kind of chocolate when you check in, and the temperature is exactly where you like it. You're spending $1,000 a night, but all you're going to talk about, all your wife's going to talk about, is they went and sourced this certain kind of French chocolate that they don't even keep on property, but because it was us, of the relationship and how much they valued it, that was waiting. What did it cost them? $5 on a $1,000 a night hotel tab, but all you talk about is the $5 chocolate. That's what.
And you remember that, like a simple thing, even this, and this is way even lower than that, but like, the airline stewardess like remembers my name, and I'm like, that I remember that. I'm like, that was cool. And then take that up a notch even further, where it's like that little cherry on top of the whole. I mean, it's just incredible how this kind of pierces into, relationships and how you form them. It's really incredible. So the other thing is that this is good for, like you mentioned a little bit before, but I just want to be clear. So it's good for like referrals quite a bit, which is extremely valuable. So that's like one way you can utilize this. And and it makes it that much easier for people to warm up. Definitely in our industry, think about it. We're asking people, typically high net worth individuals, to give 50, 100K, sometimes up to $500,000 for these real estate investments. And that they know other people that would like the same thing, but maybe it's their mom or their brother or somebody, and they're opening that door is maybe tough. You have to build that kind of trust somehow. And so this seems like a really good way to kind of get into that. And I'll just disclose, that's why we've signed up with you guys, and we're really excited to work with you guys on our gifting. And this translates extremely well to our audience and people that are out there, either raising passive investments for their real estate deals, or people that are already passive investors and looking to enhance their personal relationships. And so that's why we had you on the show, is we just saw that parallel as being something so real and usable to our audience. I mean, our audience is always looking for better ways to they have these incredible investments, which are apartment complexes.
Yep.
And a lot of them struggle maybe with raising the capital that they need, or that's a challenge. And this is just another tool that you guys can use in this incredible system that John has figured out. And the reason I started out 10 years ago, and I want you guys to understand, this has been crafted and honed over this 15-year period to get it to where it is now, where it is like incredible, this system. It's all laid out in a certain way where you're just like, wow, I see how this works. And we almost made this terrible mistake when we were trying to come up with an investor program where we were gifting people like right after we buy something. Well, guess what they think, right? That, oh, I just bought my own gift. So when we start talking to John, we're like, we got to rethink this whole program. We don't even do this anymore. We're doing it all wrong. And most people are not good at gifting. Think about it. How many really good gifts do you get in a year? And does it really, it's very few and far between. So this is really such a cool thing that is totally applicable to everything that our audience and everybody that we, all this stuff that we talk about, just a really cool thing that we found. So, John, what are you excited about right now? Like what's going on in your world that makes you excited? Cause I just want to know.
Yeah. Well, I would say I got 4 girls at home that are 10, 8, 5, and 1. So my hands are full. In multiple ways there. We're spending some time checking out some new cities. We've been in Austin hanging out with one of my best friends in the world, Elrod, and his wife Ursula, and John Broman, and some great guys. Actually, a lot of my closest friends, we all kind of, like you, grew up in Cutco together, now off doing other amazing things. We've been courting a relationship for about 3 years now with Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 Love Languages. That book is sold 22 million copies. He just endorsed Giftology. Him and his wife have been married like 56 years, and she loved the book. She's like, so she nudged him to endorse it. The hope is to write the 5 Love Languages for business with them. And we're going to have a podcast that will come out in the next 6 months. We have too many good relationships with, the Gary V's of the world. That's like, why would I not go take time to talk about, generosity with these leaders? Like, this is like a no-brainer. So there's no shortage of opportunities and fun things that are going on, even, during a pandemic. If anything, like, the pandemic has accelerated and helped us with kind of the conversations of teaching YPO guys and EO guys and Vistage and others, how to build relationships from afar. Like, a lot of people, I think, got lazy of like just doing the dinners and the ball games and the hunting trips and fishing trips, and none of that's wrong, but they're all kind of table stake type stuff. Now all that's got kind of cut down. No conferences. Like, how do you engage people from afar? So a lot of our language, even though we were teaching it for 20 years, has shifted into high gear of saying, like, this is a real opportunity. We're starting to get advisory shares to advise other gifting companies. We're not going to be the only player in the space. There's going to be other types of companies. So starting to invest in other companies and take on investment, advisor shares from some of those companies, which is kind of cool. Like to have some of these people, like we just had a meeting yesterday with 15 other authors, and collectively those authors sold, I don't know, over 25 million books. It's all people that like a decade ago, like were like unfathomable like people. And I was one of the 3 people that aggregated and brought the group together to learn from each other. Don Yeager, I invited in, and he's written 30 books, 11 of them New York Times bestsellers. So I'm getting the opportunity to learn and have, as you can call it, peers. That like we're peers in some ways, and other ways, like I don't think I'm ever going to have, I don't have a goal to have 11 New York Times bestselling books, but we're getting to run with and help. And I think because our lane is so narrow of like, people want us to speak on leadership or marketing. I'm like, no, like if you want to use gratitude and generosity as a marketing tool, as a relationship building tool, then we're your guy to speak, to consult, to help. But we've gone really, really focused into this lane. And I think because of it, we're in a blue ocean right now. We don't have to compete with, we're not talking about social media. I'm not trying to be, an influencer. I'm trying to run a business and leverage media as part of that. So that's some of the stuff that's got me fired up. Eventually, we'll buy a house in one of these 2 cities, have a small little homestead. I'm a farm kid, so I want goats and horses and some of the stuff that I grew up with that I thought I'd never want. But it's funny how life,
the nostalgic stuff.
Stuff pulls you back in.
I love it, man. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on our show. What's the best way that people can get in touch with you if they want to check out your really unique system on gifting?
Well, I'd say Giftology Systems, the download. If they go to Giftology Group, that's our website. They can email me personally. I'm not going to be the one talking strategy or necessarily or sending gifts for you, but I'll connect you to our team of giftologists. But John at Giftology Group is my personal email address. You can reach out and I can connect you to the team on the agency side or on the speaking side if that's something that somebody's interested in. But those are the places.
Awesome. John, thanks so much for being on our show. I'm sure this resonated with a ton of people, and it's truly a unique and incredible thing that you've created. And it's been really great to connect with you again. So
yeah, man, this has been a blast. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks so much.